Death of a Unicorn is a new horror comedy from A24, written and directed by Alex Schaffman. It stars Paul Rudd and Jenna Ortega as a father and his daughter who accidentally kill a unicorn while en route to a weekend retreat, where his billionaire boss seeks to exploit the creature's miraculous curative properties. The group are soon hunted down by the dead unicorn's parents. Will Poulter, Tia Leone, Richard E. Grant, Anthony Cardigan, and Sunita Mani appear in supporting roles. This review will be spoiler-free. This feels like a half-written film. They draw you in with intriguing elements that never go anywhere. The opening 20 minutes to this film was quite good. When Paul Rudd and Jenna Ortega first hit the unicorn with their car, Jenna grabs the unicorn's horn and has a vision, a spiritual connection that was not only visually interesting, but provoked a feeling of intensity that had me wanting to learn more. The lore of unicorns is a deep well, not often enough mined, and this film baits you into thinking it will, but instead of focusing on those exciting fantasy elements, it gets bogged down in a boring scientific plot. The supporting characters are keen to use the unicorn's blood for its healing powers, and this plot grated on my patience. I like Paul Rudd, but this film actually managed to make him unlikable. He was unfunny as well as a limp father. With the exception of Will Poulter, who is elevating the lackluster material as much as he possibly can, I found the supporting characters to be insufferable. I liked Jenna Ortega's character, but they kept cutting away from her. She should have been the character that we saw the whole film through. She was shown to be a more virtuous character, and it is a shame that her kinship with the unicorns wasn't properly explored. They tried to connect her experience with the unicorns to the trauma of her mother's death, but the examination is very shallow. This film was so undercooked, and it had so much potential. It has good ideas and good moments, but in between those moments, its pacing often screeches to a halt. These moments recapture your attention, but burn out very quickly. There are quite a few amusing moments, but the attempts at comedy too often fall flat. I had a similar issue with The Monkey from earlier this year. Horror comedies can be truly great when they hit the right pitch, but it is an extremely tricky tightrope to walk. The Evil Dead films are an example of the genre working swimmingly. My issue here is that the characters know that they're in a comedy when they should think that they're in a horror. Only the audience should be aware of the hilarity of what is occurring. Traumatizing things are happening, and the characters aren't reacting appropriately. This destroys any possible stakes. I liked the production design. The house they were in was cool, but the film is sloppily directed at times. It is not a bad-looking film, but there were a number of shots throughout that were framed strangely or were slightly out of focus. I always feel a little bit uncomfortable knocking CGI when it's a low-budget film. They were clearly stretching it as far as they could, but then you could also argue that they didn't have the budget for what they were trying to do. The CGI looked like very early 2000s. It works for a lot of the film because it's in the dark, but when it's not in the dark, it looks pretty questionable. The inspired elements of the script fade after the first half, and it feels like the filmmakers know they've run out of ideas, so they try to distract you with gruesome deaths. The deaths were often predictable and unearned. The film devolves into a slasher where people are chased around by the unicorns, and that could be entertaining if any moment that there isn't a gory death, you're never bored by the annoying characters and their selfish pursuits. The thing is, the film doesn't really sign you up for a slasher in its first half. So when it goes that way, you're just disappointed by its glossing over of potentially fascinating ideas. This film had good moments and some genuinely intriguing fantasy elements aided by the strong opening act, but it can never be bothered to realize its own potential, and instead devolves into a poorly paced, uninteresting and unfunny slasher film full of insufferable characters. I'm sure some people will take this film less seriously and find some enjoyment in it, but for me, it missed the mark entirely, which is very unfortunate, as I was really rooting for this one.